Hello everyone and welcome back to my studying. So, post-apocalyptic fiction. It's very common to cross it with a zombie apocalypse these days. Increasingly common, I would say. So it's no surprise that it is quite popular in the self-published space as well. So today I will be talking about a series called Slow Burn, which was written and published by Adair and narrated by Phil Thron because I bought it in audio form. The premise here is both familiar and simple. We have an outbreak of a deadly mutating virus, and this virus turns people into flesh-hungry, cannibalistic, living zombies. They're actually more like mutants that act as brainless zombies, but some of the tropes still apply here. And the story is told via first person, where Zed Zane, our protagonist, is a washed out loser with a philosophy degree, with a very traumatic childhood. He visits his parents and he finds his mother dead and his father tries to eat him. So he fends off the attack, gets bitten, and in a daze collapses and wakes up in jail, where he is blamed for the murder. And as he is trying to acclimate to his current position, the world around them collapses. And as it is collapsing, he meets another fellow future survivor and his future best friend forever, ever and ever, called Murphy. Together they discover that they are slow burns. Slow burns are people who got infected with the virus but did not turn into violent beasts. Instead, they only got some of their physical features. So they have slightly heightened body temperature, they have albino discoloration on their skin and hair, hence the in-universe name for zombies here, whites, and some other few side effects which I'll mention later. First, some context as to why I'm reviewing this. It's actually quite random, this choice. Last week I went in on a long work-related trip, and the night before the drive I decided to browse what's for sale on Audible. And I was looking for something long and preferably pulpy, schlocky light, just to pass the monotony of the road. And lo and behold, I saw the Slow Burn box set, all 9 books in one bundle for a single credit, or the dollar equivalent of however much it costs. I'll post it in the description so you can buy it if you're interested. So what did I think of it? Well, I binged all 8 on the road and I finished the 9th here and there. And instead of going over plot minutiae, I would like to tell you what sets it apart from other similar works in the genre, and which of my expectations were met and which were actually subverted. When you read the description of the series, I will not quote this verbatim, I'll just post it on a screen, you'd think that the series is this super pulpy, schlocky virus gives the selected few X-Men powers, and those few then go on a rampage with an edgelord persona. Well, no and yes, somewhat. The virus doesn't give them superpowers. Actually, the heart of this series is the far-forged friendship of the two characters, Murphy and Zed. There are these people who met as complete strangers in crazy circumstances, and the whole series, the whole readability of the series actually is thanks to their ride or die relationship. Without their banter, this series would get generic and repetitive quite quickly. And the author actually did a few things that subverted my expectations. First of all, in terms of world building, there are many different types of wights, or zombies, which instantly adds to a different flavor of the world building. And it actually even ties to some themes. For example, there are communes of immune people. Immune people cannot contract the virus, but they attract the infected. So since our heroes are technically infected with the virus, they do not draw the hordes, and they can somewhat freely move among the wights. And they can scavenge for resources and help these communes in vital ways. However, from the outside, they look just like the hordes that ate their families, their loved ones, and they are being discriminated against and treated badly. So they're doomed kind of to drift from one place to another, and they can only rely on each other because no one else has that experience. They are of two worlds, but of neither as well. They have to rely on each other so they don't stay in one place for a long time. And in addition, there are some of the, subspecies, some specimens that are somewhat in between. So they're not violent, they're not cannibalistic, they're very docile and akin to a child or an Alzheimer's patient. And whenever heroes run into them, it always adds a layer of ethics on it. Is it okay to kill them, or is it okay to have them to be a collateral damage since they are in the way, but they haven't attacked anyone, and so on and so forth, should someone take care of them. And another thing that I actually really enjoyed is that there are no time skips. That's a positive for me. It might be a negative for some, but on one hand, books feel very episodic, but since there are no time skips, as one ends, the other one instantly starts in a constant timeline through all of the 9 novels. And I don't think you could have done it in a single tome of 1,000 pages. You would have to have some sort of time skips for the sake of the pacing. But since they're published in such a piecemeal way, and you can binge them easily, which I did, you can pick and choose. If it were a novel in the length of The Stand, for example, I think it would have been very difficult to get through. And another thing that I liked is also what sets it apart. It takes place in one relatively small area of Texas where the protagonist lives, and more often than not in apocalyptic and especially in zombie fiction, the survivors always travel far and long to reach some sort of oasis, some sort of promised land away from the horrors. And doing such, you are never attached to one place. And here there's this genuine attachment to the place they live. They do move in from one safe house to another, but we get to imagine, or at least I did, the layout of the town quite clearly in my head. And it elevates the story somewhat. It really adds up. And also there's very little downtime. So there are no soap opera moments where survivors settle in one location, one haven, and then the pacing just tanks as they live out their hunter-gatherer life. The pacing is brisk, and you can make a case that it is somewhat predictable, and I will, but it flows well, and the ending is a satisfying ending. I understand that there is a 10th novel being written, but I don't know what it entails, but books 1 to 9 are a complete, satisfactory story. Now on to some flaws. As I said, this book doesn't have time skips, which is a positive for me. The narrative is episodic, but the rhythm of it can get repetitive. So one pattern that emerges time and time again is we have Zed and Murphy, friends forever and ever, who are on their own, and they find a group of survivors and a potential safe location. They settle in for a brief moment, for a day or two, then a tragedy strikes. They are either betrayed or the horde finds them, and they have to escape, and rinse and repeat. Regroup and repeat. And thankfully, as I said, the banter between Zed and Murphy really saves the series. The dialogue between them is great, which is why I find puzzling where the protagonist is very fond of giving these soliloquies via internal monologue, and those internal soliloquies can get very edgy and cringy at times. It rides this thin line of being too edgy or maybe even slightly nihilistic, which I think is to its detriment, and why it stands out, because the actual dialogue between people, and especially between two leads, is great. But whenever we get purely POV thoughts of the protagonist, I tend to roll my eyes. So there's that. I mean, if I were to rate it, I would rate the entire series as probably 3.5 out of 5. But ultimately, the scores are meaningless. If you find it compelling with my description, give it a try. It's just 1 credit, all 9 books. If not, there's that. Do tell me if you read it. What are your thoughts on it? Have you read it as they were coming out, or you've went through them as I did in one go? And as always, I would very much like to thank my patrons, Katie and Ethan. If anyone else wants to support my Patreon, the link is in the description. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and hope you're having a good time of day, whichever it is. Bye bye.